Queen of the Damned. She drew close to my ear. "Do you hear it?" she asked. I listened. The wind seemed annihilating, yet there came a dull chorus from the earth. Human voices chanting, some in time with each other, others at random. Voices praying aloud in an Asian tongue. Far, far away I could hear them, and then near at hand. Important to distinguish the two sounds. First, there was a long procession of worshippers ascending through the mountain passes and over the cliffs, chanting to keep themselves alive as they trudged on in spite of weariness and cold. And within a building, a loud, ecstatic chorus chanting fiercely over the clang of cymbals and drums. I gathered her head close to mine and I looked down, but the clouds had become a solid bed of whiteness, yet I could see through the minds of each worshippers the brilliant vision of the courtyard and the temple of marble arches and of vast painted rooms. The procession wound towards the temple. "I want to see it," I said. She didn't answer, but she didn't stop me as I drifted downward, stretching out on the air as if I were a bird flying, yet descending until we were in the very middle of clouds. She had become light again, as if she were nothing. And as we left the sea of whiteness, I saw the temple gleaming below, a tiny clay model of itself. It seemed the terrain buckling here and there beneath the meander walls. The stench of burning bodies rose from its blazing pyres, and towards the cluster of roofs and towers, men and women wound their way along the perilous paths from as far as I could see. "Tell me, who is inside, my prince?" she said. "Tell me who's the god of this temple." "See it. Draw close to it." The old trick, but all at once I began to fall. I let out a terrible cry. She caught me. "More care, my prince," she said, steadying me. I thought my heart was going to burst. "You cannot move out of your body to look into the temple and fly at the same time. Look through the eyes of the mortals the way you did before." I was still shaking, clutching hold of her. "I'll drop you again if you don't calm yourself," she said gently. "Tell your heart to do as you would have it do." I gave a great sigh. My body ached suddenly from the constant force of the wind, and my eyes, they were stinging so badly again I couldn't see anything. But I tried to subdue these little pains, or rather to ignore them, as if they didn't exist. I took hold of her firmly and started down, telling myself to go slowly, and then again I tried to find the minds of the mortals and see what they saw. Gilded walls, cusped arches, every surface glittering with decoration, incense rising, mingling with the scent of fresh blood. In blurred snatches, I saw him, the god of the temple. "A vampire," I whispered, "a blood-sucking devil. He draws them to himself and slaughters them at his leisure. The place reeks of death. And so there shall be more death," she whispered, kissing my face. "Now, very fast, so fast mortal eyes can't see you. Bring us down to the courtyard beside the funeral." I could have sworn it was done before I decided it. I'd done no more than consider the idea, and there I was, fallen against the rough plaster wall, with hard stones under my feet, trembling, my head reeling, my innards grinding in pain. My body wanted to keep going down right through the solid rock. Sinking back against the wall, I heard the chanting before I could see anything. I smelt the fire, the bodies burning. Then I saw the flames. "That was very clumsy, my prince," she said softly. "We almost struck the wall. I don't exactly know how it happened." "Ah, but that's the key," she said. "The word exact. The spirit in you obeys swiftly and completely. Consider a little more. You don't cease to hear and see as you descend. It merely happens faster than you realize. Do you know the pure mechanics of snapping your fingers? No, you do not. Yet you can do it. A mortal child can do it." I nodded. The principle was clear, all right, as it had been with the target and the gun. "Merely a matter of degrees," I said, "and a surrender. Fearless surrender." I nodded. The truth was I wanted to fall on a soft bed and sleep. I blinked my eyes at the roaring fire, the sight of the bodies going black in flames. One of them wasn't dead. An arm was raised, fingers curled. Now he was dead. Poor devil. All right. Her cold hand touched my cheek. It touched my lips, and then she smoothed back the tangled hair of my head. "You've never had a teacher, have you?" she asked. "Magnus orphaned you the night he made you. Your father and brothers were fools. As for your mother, she hated her children." "I've always been my own teacher," I said soberly. "And I must confess I've always been my favorite pupil as well." Laughter. "Maybe it was a little conspiracy," I said, "of pupil and teacher. But as you said, there was never anyone else." She was smiling at me. The fire was playing in her eyes. Her face was luminous, beautiful. "Surrender," she said, "and I'll teach you the things you've never dreamed of. You've never known battle, real battle. You've never felt the purity of a righteous cause." I didn't answer. I felt dizzy, not merely from the long journey through the air, but the gentle caress of her words and the fathomless blackness of her eyes. It seemed a great part of her beauty was the sweetness of her expression, the sincerity of it, the way that her eyes held steady even when the glistening white flesh of her face moved suddenly with a smile or a subtle frown. I knew if I let myself, I'd be terrified of what was happening. She must have known it. She took me in her arms again. "Drink, Prince," she whispered. "Take the strength you need to do as I would have you do." I don't know how many moments passed. When she pulled away, I was drugged for an instant. Then the clarity was always overwhelming. And then the music of the temple began thundering through the walls. As she drew me along after, it seemed my body didn't exist anymore, except as a vision I kept in place. I felt of my own face, the bones beneath my skin, to touch something solid that was myself. But this skin, this sensation, it was utterly new. What was left of me? The wooden doors opened, as if by magic, before us. We passed silently into the long corridor of slender white marble pillars and scalloped arches, but this was but the outer border of an immense central room, and the room was filled with frenzied screaming worshippers who did not even see us or sense our presence as they continued to dance, to chant, to leap in air in the hopes of glimpsing their one and only God. "Keep at my side, Lestat," she said, the voice cutting through the din as if I'd been touched by a velvet glove. The crowd parted violently, bodies thrust in right and left. Screaming replaced the chant immediately. The room was in chaos, as a path lay open for us to the center of the room. The cymbals and drums were silenced. Moans and soft, piteous cries surrounded us. Then a great sigh of wonder rose as Akasha stepped forward and threw back her veil. Many feet away, in the center of the ornate floor, stood the blood god,